Hello and welcome to The Wilderness of Creativity, a platform for creatives and aspiring entrepreneurs to share their stories of survival. I'm your host, Lucy, and I'm so excited to share this creative journey with you. Working full-time and raising a small human has caused me to lose track and wander off-piste on several occasions, but I followed the signs and here we are, surviving the wild and feeling more connected and inspired than ever before. Whether you're a seasoned adventurer or just starting out, I'm here to cheer you on as you navigate this journey. Together, we will uncover practical tips and strategies for cultivating creativity, explore different ways of prioritising our creative energy when there are people to please and deadlines to meet. And we'll also discuss how we can foster a mindset that inspires connection, innovation and play in our daily lives. Tune in every month to hear how my guests find focus in a world that never stops buzzing and discover what it really means to take the road less travelled. Subscribe now to listen to the Wilderness of Creativity and remember to like, share and leave a review to show your support. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram, so come and join in with our conversations. And that's it. Welcome to your next adventure. Hello and welcome to a bonus episode of the Wilderness of Creativity. After 12 years in high-intensity corporate roles, Laura-Mai noticed a decline in her mental health and well-being, prompting a transformative sabbatical that took her back to her home in Jamaica. This journey of self-discovery led to the foundations of Root Beginnings, and now, as a certified coach and vinyasa yoga teacher, Laura-Mai is here to share her insights on trusting intuition, creating intentional space, and cultivating authentic connections. Let's get to the episode. The card that's come up for you is difficult roads often lead to beautiful destinations.
Oh, so perfect. Well, what's interesting, it's so perfectly imperfect with that card, right? Because it's, so many of us want the quick fix and the direct linear path, but it's just never that way. And the magic doesn't show up in that way either, I don't think.
It was a journey of self-discovery for you, wasn't it? Do you want to explain a little bit about the idea of Root Beginnings and what you really felt was important to bring to that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So just the name Root Beginnings is really significant for me, and I hope for everybody else that encounters it, because root and feeling rooted and grounded, certainly in my own journey, has been extremely important. And I recognize the importance now because when I didn't feel rooted and grounded, I really felt at sea. And I think that had a huge impact on my mental and physical health. So I was in corporate for a number of years and went through the motions of being on a corporate ladder and sort of being very fixated on one path, one linear path that I thought that I had to be on. And it just took me to a place of really just exhaustion, and burnout was a physical outcome, but there was layers and layers of stuff which I think had compounded to get me to that point. But it was the physical kind of, I just can't do this anymore, that got me to a point of feeling so uprooted. And just, I felt like I couldn't tether to anything. Everything was sort of, every time I tried to reach out and grab something and just to hold on, there was nothing there apart from my work. And I just was feeling so disconnected from work. So then I was feeling disconnected to everything. So when I decided to take some time out and go back to Jamaica, which is where I'm from, I'm even wearing green to represent this morning. I just felt pulled to do that. I just felt this need to go back to somewhere that made me feel myself, or what I thought would make me feel myself. And I was right. I grew up in Jamaica, so it was a real place that I felt, oh God, this is me. And I could actually breathe again. I just felt that sort of breath of life just coming back. And so
I can hear that as well in your voice as you say that. There's kind of like a release.
A release, exactly. Because I think that when we're going, as we were saying at the beginning of this conversation, we hold our breath and we tense, and our whole bodies kind of take that on. Our whole body takes that on. And when you reconnect or reroute, you do release. You're like, oh, okay, and your kind of roots can kind of go into the ground a little bit more, and you feel that stability. And when I went to Jamaica initially, my uncle was living there at the time, and he said to me, Laura-Mai, you've lost your groundation, which is a Jamaican phrase which means a sense of identity and connection to yourself.
Wow.
So when you lose your groundation, you've lost all of that sense of self. And that really hit home. I was like, oh, that was, a moment of truth. But it really was the beginning of the trajectory to Root Beginnings, and how that became my business and myself, really, because the groundation, I was going to call the business Inspiration Through Groundation. That was the initial, because I was so connected to that term.
Absolutely.
But Root Beginnings became more real for me, I suppose, because it meant it represented a forward motion, which is so you're sort of rerouting, reconnecting to recreate and begin in a direction that feels much more purposeful and aligned with who you are.
Absolutely. And how long did that take to kind of to feel like you were coming back to yourself, and those sort of initial stages of setting up Root Beginnings?
So I think I'm still going through the motions. And so I decided to take a leap and leave my corporate job completely.
Wow. How did that feel?
Oh, I just noticed that I said that really like nonchalantly and calmly. I decided to leave. Because
I know that it would have been more than that, wouldn't it? Yeah.
So many people that I've spoken to have had this similar experience, especially when you're really focused on your career, which is fantastic. There is nothing, but what it did for me, at least, was completely take over my whole identity and my whole self. So it just became everything that I was and that I spoke about. My working day was a long working day. And so I was exhausted at the end of it. I used to fantasize about rest and getting rest, and when would I get that? And it just never seemed to happen. So it was just compounding and compounding physically, and the sort of the pressure I was putting on myself to get to the sort of the top of my corporate ladder, which was chief of staff. I always wanted just to be at that position, and everything else didn't matter until I got there. And then even when I got there, then nothing else mattered. So it was just this sort of vortex of nothing matters apart from this identity. And so physically it started showing up for me in terms of panic attacks, and my mental health deteriorated quite significantly. And there was then a series of months where I just was, questioning, is this normal? Like, am I supposed to be feeling like this? Because I'm up here in terms of where I thought I wanted to be in my career, but I'm absolutely down here in rock bottom.
And do you mind if I ask as well, like, how did anyone else notice that?
So my husband definitely, and he was probably one of the first, even maybe before I wanted to be aware of it. Maybe I knew deep down, but he was definitely, red flagging and saying, hi, I'm not sure that this is, this is okay. And I remember saying to him, it's fine. Like, this is just what I need to do. Like, you're just going to have to trust me. You're just going to have to, just ignore this. This is all fine here. Nothing to see. And I did that very much so with my friendship groups and at work as well. And I remember one of my really dear colleagues, when I shared the article with Intentional Living, where I was really talking about my journey, she was like, I just had no idea that you were suffering so much and in that space. And I said to her, I was like, well, neither did I. I actually, I don't think maybe I knew intuitively, but I wasn't connected to that part of me at that time of my life. So I didn't know that was going on, I guess, on a deeper level. I just was like, this is where I should be. This looks really great. Everyone else is saying I'm doing a great job, and this is where I'm. But there was just this gap in between, which I now realize was that connection piece, which I just didn't know.
the concept of intentional space. It's like creating that intentional space for yourself, isn't it?
Definitely. And you know, that one of the key blockers to that for so many of us, and when you're in that sort of go zone, it's like, what do you mean create space? You know, first and foremost, like actually literally, like how do you expect me to create space, you know, when there's so much going on, firstly. But then secondly, I think the more that I've allowed myself to open up and experience this, and read and gone through my own journey, I realized that so much of the other piece of it is avoidance, and actually avoiding to create the space because we're worried about what's going to come up. I think there's so much stuff that we bring into our lives, and when we're on that sort of almost self-destructive path, certainly I was, it's just like, just go, I don't care about anything else. I think that there's definitely a deeper consciousness that you're not connected to, but it's like, if you stop, then goodness knows what's going to come up, and that's worse than where you are now. And I didn't know that at the time, but that's just through creating that intentional space. And to be honest, that was forced on me because it was really doing that, or really being at the mercy of what my physical and mental health was bringing up for me. So it was sort of, you're going to have to make a change. And I'm just really grateful that the creative space was the change that I made.
How does that intentional space show up for you and for your clients?
So the way I did it for myself first, and I think this is where I feel so connected with Root Beginnings, is because it's just as much my journey as it is the community of people that I am surrounded with now, which is just really wonderful, because I always used to feel that, like, especially when it came towards the end of where I was in the corporate space, I always used to feel like people who looked so peaceful and so sort of happy and connected was sort of over here, and I was like, I don't know how to get there, like and so it was like so with Root Beginnings, that I've really wanted to be able to create a community where it feels like we're in this really together, and we're all learning and growing from each other. And as we've said before, it's not linear. You know, there'll be some days and weeks and months where you're really feeling like you have that forward momentum, but actually there'll be times when you circle right back, and that's okay, that's life. But it's just showing up together in that space to support in a way that really resonates. So when I first started creating space, because I took that leap, I created physical and mental space because I just stopped my job completely, and I was able to go away and just take that. So I went for really long walks barefoot, and so nature's a massive part of Root Beginnings and to me as well, because I think that being connected to nature, being connected to, like, literally kind of skin to the earth, and really feeling that sense of rootedness, really, it slows you right down. And so it does that kind of naturally. So just physically and then mentally, things just start to settle, I think is probably the word. It's like you're just settling into yourself. And then once you can do that, then things just start to become a little clearer, and you're like, oh, okay. And it's really one step at a time too. And I really talk about that a lot, because certainly through my experience when I wanted to move and change things up, I got so tangled in the how to, like I was saying, like everyone was sort of over here, and I was like, I don't know how to get there, because they're multiple steps away from where I was. So it's okay, so what's the first step? And the way that shows up with Root Beginnings is using different methods. So having seasonal workshops, because maybe that's enough for some people, just to check in quarterly and seasonally and be like, okay, so where am I? Or mind body coaching, which is more frequent to get that momentum, or the annual retreats. But all the threads through all of them is space. It's just space to simply be and to breathe and to kind of meet you exactly where you are.
It's so important to share these stories, because it can feel quite isolating, I think. The annual retreat, and then the seasonal workshops, which sound amazing. Do you want to kind of just tell our listeners a little bit about each of those?
Yeah, absolutely. And just before I jump into that too, I was just going to share your passion for sharing stories as well, because and that actually will take me on to the retreats and why I'm doing them in some way, because throughout my own journey, and I fully resonate with you in terms of feeling quite isolated, and that you're, you know, just going through things on your own. And I think that's what happens a lot of the time. So then you just stay in that lane, you just stay doing what you're doing, because you just assume that no one else is doing anything, or, you know, that you're just maybe it's just me, and maybe I'm you know, the anomaly. And so as I started to shift out of that, and I'm same as you, just met so many incredible people that were inspiring me and motivating me to continue with those shifts, I wanted to tell their stories as well. So I do that through a blog and different people's stories, because in exactly that way, you never know who is going to read that and be inspired and say, oh my goodness, that person is doing exactly what I wanted to do, or what I want to do. Let's reach out to them. And that's how those kind of sparks of connectivity continue to shine and to continue to grow. Because I think that without doing that, then it's very kind of insular, and you stay kind of doing what you were doing. And so with the retreats, so those sparks of connection was what connected me to Sandra, who is Colombian, but she was living in Miami. She was connected to my aunt, and it was like a whole kind of series of connections. And they said, well, do you want to go to Colombia and help Sandra set up her retreat center, Madre Cocoon, after I'd been to Jamaica? And I was like, absolutely, yes, fantastic, perfect. And so I went to Colombia for 3 months and helped her literally sort of build what's now this beautiful spot in the mountains of Santa Elena called Madre Cocoon. And it was just so aligned with everything that was starting to shape up with me with Root Beginnings. And Sandra's very much about flow and being in nature. And I think from a retreat perspective, the retreats I had been on and what I had experienced was that there's quite usually quite a curated schedule, and it's like, you know, from the morning through to the evening, and that's great, and that serves a purpose for sure. But what I was recognizing when I was at Madre was I needed to reconnect with my own unique flow. Like I didn't know what that looked like, because I was always on a schedule. And I always laugh with Sandra, because on my first day when I arrived, I kind of went into the kitchen with my notebook, and I was just like, okay, what do we do today? You know, writing things down. And she did exactly what you did. She laughed at me, and she was just like, no, that's not how we do things here.
I love that. That would be me as well, totally.
You know, and I was just like, okay, how do we do things? And she was just like, we just go with the flow. And I was just like, go with the what? Like, what does that? These sort of concepts just didn't mean anything to me at the time. And I now recognize how important it is. But coming from over a decade of being in corporate, when things are just so structured, scheduled, and rigid, the idea and the concept of going with the flow was alien to me, but it also felt really scary. I was like, I don't know, because that means that you need to connect with yourself and trust what your body's telling you to do each day, what you actually feel like doing, which again was a whole new concept to me. I was in my mind so much thinking about what I needed to do. I had no idea how to feel, like what was going on. So the months that I spent at Madre was all about reconnecting with flow and being able to wake up in the morning and say, what do I feel like? And in that setting, of course, you have the days to play around with, but that can show up in our day-to-day here too, you know, in your lives, where you're just waking up and you're taking a moment, like, how do I feel? Do I want to do a workout? Do I not? Do I need an extra 10 minutes in bed? Those are the small things that you can bring in, you know, in your day-to-day. You don't have to be away for it. But the idea of the retreat is to really focus on that reconnection of your unique flow. So it's a 6-day retreat, and you come, and it's, you know, there's a very loose schedule. If you imagine a sort of a bridge with the flow of the water, so there's like a schedule that kind of keeps things moving, but everything is very fluid. And the idea is that you come and you just allow yourself just to settle into nature and just be guided by what comes up each day. If you feel like going and doing some yoga, that's available. If you feel like doing some horse therapy, you can. There's different things which you can do if you feel to. So that's the essence of it.
That sounds incredible.
And in the same way with the workshops, they're called seasonal because I really believe that there's, the seasons really impact us. And
they do.
And again, when you're sort of so fixated on a certain way of being, you're not open to what's going on around you from a very natural and seasonal perspective as we go through the months. When we're going into more of a hibernation and feeling colder, it's like, what foods do you need? What kind of pace do you need? And those things don't tend to get adjusted. It's just, you kind of just go year by year. So the seasonal workshops are placed in spring, summer, autumn, and winter. And I pair them with seasonal foods. I work with a nutritionist to do that. And then work on the movement to reflect where we are in the seasons and what our bodies need. So it serves as a kind of every 3-month check-in with our bodies, really, to see where we are and what we need going forward.
Can you explain like how you work with your clients in sort of, getting them to a place where they can maintain that sense of flow when they're back to normal life, so to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's such an important part because we go on a retreat to have more awareness and create that space, but it's no good if we can't bring what we experienced into our day to day. So I think it's a couple of things. It's having a holistic approach. So I think what I really learned through my whole focus on my work identity was I'd lost everything else which was going on around me. But more importantly, like the simple things which just made me feel really good. It was almost like a punishment thing because you're just in that kind of zone of go, go, go. And so just reconnecting to what it is that makes you feel just really happy, whether it's making a cake or something, or reading a book, or for me it's horse riding, making just time to just do something which makes you feel uniquely you. And I think importantly emphasizes your authentic capabilities.
Yes.
So when I horse ride or swim, I just feel really good. It doesn't mean I'm a great horse rider or a swimmer, but it's my authenticity and my capabilities that are showing up. And that then reinforces, the bigger decisions that you begin to want to make potentially as you go through those. And it's the same thing with checking in with what you feel as opposed to what you should or what your mind is telling you. So again, waking up in the morning and you're just really tired. So, okay, you can just take 10 more minutes in bed or just to lay, and just honoring that. And in the same way through your day. So, at lunchtime, for example, and you want to have, I don't know, some chips. These are silly examples, but it's like, I'm just going to have the damn chips and not salads. It's just like, it's just giving yourself permission and importantly, listening to your body's like instincts. And I think when you start listening and importantly then trusting those decisions, oh, that decision actually made me feel really good. Then the next day you do the same thing, and the next day, those again start to build that foundation of intuition and trust in what decisions you're making that make you feel good, which I think then start to shape the bigger decisions around if you're wanting to change something more significantly in your life, because those will always, be some element of fear, or like, because it's a change. But I think that's where it shifts from the fear and I'm not going to do anything to the fear, but I'm going to do it anyway because it feels really good.
I'm trying to understand how and why we lose that capacity, and maybe it is just because, we grow up, because we have to get a job, because we have to pay the bills, because X, Y, Z. But, how can we preserve, if that's the right word, how can we preserve that level of curiosity? For me, it's about being in a space with people like yourself who share that same drive, that same energy, that same ambition, because it just, it permeates, doesn't it? And feeds into everything that we're doing. Can you think of kind of anyone who you have that same connection with, or that you're going to be working with in the next few months or in the future?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think that's one of my biggest inspirations and drivers for being and doing this kind of work, is because we come across our people, like came across you and Nisha and Stella and others in the community, because you're looking for it, you're feeling that it's an energy that when you really empower yourself to be in it, I feel like it just attracts certain people. And it's not because that's a magical thing. It's because when you're looking on socials or you're going to certain events, you're going to them and looking for those things for a certain energy, for a certain person. And so I think people come into your world, and community is such a pillar of everything that I certainly do, because the support and the motivation, inspiration that we all get from each other just fuels that cycle of creativity. That it's so unique. You know, when you think about our world of well-being, and we're all doing something that has probably a similar thread, but it's also unique because it's really coming from our own hearts, and we only have, it's only our heart, and so that's the uniqueness that comes. But then it comes together into this kind of into this part of community, which just feels so like such a belonging, I think. And
yes.
I think that's kind of part of it. And I think one of the mistakes I always used to make was when I started being really clear about that I needed to make a bigger change, I was trying to do it, but to keep all of the behaviors that I was holding on to. So I was trying to do it and keep everybody in my life, keep the same habits and behaviors, keep my same schedule. And I got so frustrated with that. And what I've learned is that you can't be the person that you really are meant to be unless you allow space for it to come in. It's just not going to work like that. You can't continue to do all the things that you're doing if you are not feeling aligned. You have to be able to let go. And I think that's where the sort of sense of letting go to create space, creating that intentional space, it gives that, okay, so what is taking up all my time and energy that I'm not able to shift to where I want to be over here? Is it the gym class at 6 a.m. every morning that's just not serving me anymore? Maybe I can stop doing that and actually spend some time going for a slower walk, because that's what I need right now. It's sort of, and that's where the kind of the tuning into the mind body piece comes, because when you're connected to that, you can hear and listen more intuitively about things you need to let go of to make space for what's to come.
I think part and parcel of this journey, I don't know about for you, but it's accepting. Mm-hmm. There is going to be an element of fear. There is going to be an element of wanting to control the situation. But if you surround yourself with the right people, the right energy, they will help you.
Yeah, that's it. And those sorts of things start to happen naturally when you're just much more open to just accepting, like you said, and just I think it's kind of almost understanding that with change is the unknown, because it's a change to what you know. It's a change to the familiar. And I think that's why I feel the reconnection piece is so important, because and the way that I work with my clients is through sort of a framework of reroute or reconnect and recreate and reignite. And it's kind of it's circular as well, like that, because it can kind of, you go this way and that way, and it just depends on where you are. Because it's really just not linear in any way. You can, move from reconnect to reignite. It just depends sort of, the way things shape up. But I think that once you have that real sense of self, that real connection to who you are and what you truly want to do, when there's challenges, when things are feeling more difficult, which, as we started at the beginning of the conversation, the difficult road, like that's always going to be the case. There's nothing, you don't just kind of sail through and everything works perfectly. It's all of those lessons and difficulties and challenges which help shape your experiences and then how you want to show up. But if you have that kind of central piece of connection, then that's always there for you. That's always your breath. That's always your piece of, okay, let me just come back to that. Does that still feel right? Does that still feel aligned? Okay, this is difficult, but I'm still going to keep moving forward because it feels right. And I think without that piece, and that's where we can falter or feel like, oh my goodness, so let me just retract or withdraw back into what you were doing before. But it's that central piece of connection which helps steady the path through the difficult times.
Do you do morning pages? Do you do journaling? Do you do breath work?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was really inspired by The Artist's Way when I read that in Jamaica, and I have it on my shelf here. It's such a such a central piece that I share with my clients as well, because the morning pages, and especially, she talks a lot about writing, but I think just expressing, whether that's morning art or, morning breathing, I think that's a really important thing that I used to always misinterpret, that you had to be still or you had to do one thing for it to work. There's just so many different ways of doing it. It's experimenting and finding your thing, but a morning something, whether it's morning pages, a morning scribble, a morning breath, or for me, sometimes I go into the middle of the park and I'm just like, I just like, I really do. I'm just like, sometimes it's just needed.
I love that.
I just really have to like yell or like sing at the top of my voice or something. Like a little quiet morning pages doesn't quite cut it sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I'm the same. Like, if I come downstairs and Oscar's just like running around, sort of like screaming and shouting, I'm like, yeah, that's what he needs to do. And he'll often sort of loll around on the sofa. And, as a first time parent, I was thinking, oh no, we can't have him rolling around on the sofa and jumping around. But then I realised when I don't move, I feel so stagnant. And all he's doing is he's shifting the energy.
That's it.
So it's just, acknowledging that and going, okay, we can learn something from this 4-year-old.
That totally. Absolutely. And you're exactly right. It's the shifting of energy, and energy is different every day, like hour to hour, like it moves and you have to move with it. You can't expect yourself to show up every day in the same robotic way. It's just not the way it is. So some mornings you might need to just run around the kitchen and just,
dance or
whatever it is that just, and again, this just speaks to like what feels right for you, like what is that, and that's okay. And just giving yourself permission to show up in that authentic way, I think, is, because for me, certainly, I really felt a lot of, I don't know if shame's really the right word, but just embarrassment, maybe, just to be me, like, because I am quite expressive. I love to dance, and I was just like, I always felt so small, I guess, and I shouldn't go and dance around in the park or like yell or whatever, or express myself in a way that I felt. And I just think if we can again just reconnect to ourselves, we can create and express in such a unique way, which makes us all feel good. And there's so much to learn from children, and seeing how they express themselves. And that's one thing I say to my clients is, what did you used to love to do as a child? Like, what were the things you used to do? Was it to paint or to, go and do X, Y, and Z? And that often then is that connection piece, which is so powerful because it makes you remember who that inner child was, which can then create and express.
It comes back down to the question that I'm answering and trying to answer with the podcast is, is creativity a luxury or a necessity? And I think it can be both. I think sometimes we have the luxury of time to be creative, and I think that's part and parcel of it. But like you just said, with your clients, you come back to what did your younger self used to do to survive, to explore, and a lot of that comes down to creativity, I think.
I feel like creative is connection to your authentic self, and so my take on it would be it's a necessity, but it's just finding a way that you can connect with it, whether it's through poetry or the art or doing things. And I think if you can just go back to, because some people just don't know that to start with. It's like, well, I don't know, and so it's like, again, so it's just those small things which make you feel good. So like reading a book or whatever it is, but it's just taking those couple of minutes, those 10-15 minutes to just do something that makes you feel good. And then I do believe that from that it starts to fuel that sense of creativity, or maybe I could do that more, or actually maybe I'm reading, but actually I really like this book of poetry, why don't I try and write some poetry? It kind of takes you on that journey organically through to suddenly you're sort of doing this creative piece, and you're like, it doesn't have to be a sort of a thing. It's just, it can be quite organic like that.
we're heading out of the summer holidays now into September. What are you looking forward to moving forwards with Root Beginnings?
Oh, well, gosh, so much. So I'm the same as you, and I've been going and just saying yes to everything, and it's felt wonderful. But I recognize the need to refocus, and so I'm working on, it's coming up to my 1 year anniversary with Root Beginnings in September.
Yay, congratulations.
Thank you. So it feels very significant, and I've decided to celebrate it with the community at 12th House. So everybody is welcome. And so that's something I'm really looking forward to really sort of punctuate that time and this year, and just feel that sort of sense of gratitude with community, because that's really been such an important part of my journey. And then the retreat is coming up in September as well, so I'll be in Colombia for a lot of September. So yeah, just lots of things which are coming together in this 1 year. It's kind of a really beautiful coming together, it feels, of lots of things that I've tried and experimented with, some things I haven't worked, and just accepting that, and that's fine, and just really focusing on the things which are working really beautifully.
Absolutely. And that time to reflect. And like you say, gratitude is such a huge part of the process of learning and exploring and developing and discovering, and celebrating those little wins. It sounds like you've had an amazing year, a real year of growth and expansion. So it sounds like it's going to go from strength to strength.
Thank you.
So excited.
I'm
so excited for you.
Thank you.
And if people are interested in connecting with you and perhaps signing up to the retreats or the workshops, how can people find you, Laura-Mai?
What my preference would be, because I love connection first before kind of going through them and booking, is just sending me an email on info@rootbeginnings.co.uk, or just popping me a DM on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn as well. Again, or Root Beginnings lowercase. So pop me a message and we'll jump on a call and connect.
It's been absolutely lovely talking to you.
It's been such a pleasure. I've loved it. Thank you for having me.
Hi, Lucy here. Have you heard? The Wilderness of Creativity podcast has been nominated for a Women in Podcasting Award 2024. Your vote not only supports the podcast, but it also amplifies women's voices in podcasting and champions creativity far and wide. Just head over to Facebook or Instagram to cast your vote. Thanks for listening. Stay wild.